we've all grown accustomed to the reality that this is an election year like no other, but we also should get ready for the sobering reality that with all that's riding on the outcome, the final outcome could make it an election week instead of an election day. Much of that, as you said, due to the coronavirus and what much of the American electorate is doing to avoid coming into contact with it, namely voting absentee or through mail-in ballots.
I think we're looking at, 5 to 7 days, roughly a week.
All right, so the U.S. Elections Project at the University of Florida says more than 67 million ballots had been cast early. But it's when those votes can start to be tabulated that varies by state. Now, looking at the numbers, the states where the election could sway in favor of either President Trump or former Vice President Biden, as you said, they combined for a total of 201 electoral votes. Yes, we're talking about those swing states, and we will likely see the earliest vote totals in states like Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Arizona, and Nevada. Now, those states can count early arriving mail-in votes prior to Election Day. Now, there are jurisdictions that allow a few days before the election to process mail-in votes, like Iowa, Maine, and Nebraska. But remember, processing just means preparing the ballots for tabulation. When the actual counting takes place, that varies by state. But here's where we get bogged down. Wisconsin, Georgia, Michigan, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania, by law, cannot start counting in advance. But if they are properly postmarked, absentee ballots in Pennsylvania can be received until November 6th. And in that battleground state, a close race could mean final counts would not be available until the weekend.
When you think of the history of our country, during Lincoln's time, you cast your ballot for president and you might not find out who the winner was for a month or more.
Yeah, that's Susan Lerner, Executive Director of Common Cause, a government watchdog group that will also be watching election results closely. And Tamsin and Corey, it's also going to be an interesting night for news organizations. As you know, they're accustomed to being able to call the race on election night. And right now it appears that all bets are off on that in the event of some really tight races, especially in those key battleground states that we talked about. In other words, if you're a fan of roller coasters, you're going to love election night 2020.